Hey guys, what is up? I hope you are well, or as well as you possibly can be given the circumstances of existing, and nevertheless existing during a retrograde shadow period, which is so crazy because this retrograde that I'm going to be talking about, honey, she doesn't even start until the 19th. Thank you for joining, my love. Hi. It doesn't even start until the 19th, but we are so deep in like the shadow period of it that I don't doubt for a second you're not already experiencing some of like the side effects of this retrograde that I'm going to be talking about. But if you didn't read it in the title, I'm going to be talking about this Venus retrograde, darling, in the sign of Capricorn, which kicks off on the 19th and ends on the 29th of January. It's a long time. It's a long time to be in a retrograde state. But we're already in the shadow period of it. We've been in the shadow period for about a week already. We're a week out. So I just want to preface this by saying if communication has been weird, if people from your past have been showing up, if you've been developing new random crushes, I'll go through like what exactly is happening right now, but I would just advise you not to take any major action or to overthink anything that's happening right now, but to just kind of coast and vibe with what the lesson and everything that you're experiencing right now could be. So to preface, what I'm going to do is talk a little bit on like the overview of what this retrograde means for everybody, and then I'm going to go through what exactly is this retrograde highlighting for you specifically relative to your rising sign at the end. So if you know your rising sign, that is good information to have. So anyway, yes, I hope you're well, and I'll get into it. So this Venus retrograde is in the sign of Capricorn, and I think what's especially important to immediately point out is that it's going to be conjoining Pluto, which is tea. Anytime Venus and Pluto are doing any kind of dance in the sky, especially conjunction, we're really going to be faced with like, you know, Venus ruling not only, of course, relationships and beauty, but also just like our sense of self-worth. And Pluto, which obviously, you know, is the god of the underworld that really brings up our shadows and the depths of us, having those two kind of like polar opposite, but in a lot of ways, I would say similar energies, if you really look at it, working together is really going to bring us to a space where we are reflecting on our sense of self-worth, our beliefs surrounding our sense of self-worth, and how deep do our beliefs surrounding any thoughts of unworthiness, where do they stem from? And of course, with it being in the sign of Capricorn, which is a sign that rules authority and like conditioning, you really want to look at what have I learned, whether it's from what I've watched in my own homes, whether it is, you know, what the media has taught me, what, you know, our societal like upbringing has taught us about what it means to define our sense of self-worth, and really like uprooting that from the core of it to be in a state of a healthy and innate sense of self-worth. So I just want to preface this by saying that if this is like an intense or a more intense Venus retrograde than typical, it's because of the role the role that Pluto is playing in really making us look at the depths of what it means to actually really be in a state of alignment when it comes to our sense of self-worth, and really like questioning, where did I begin to think these thoughts about myself, and where do they stem from, and who do I have, I guess, to blame, but ultimately you're being empowered to take back what it means to redefine your sense of self-worth and where you want to source it. Thank you very much for joining. It means the world. So yeah, so Pluto is conjoining Venus during this retrograde, but otherwise Venus retrograde, darling. Like I said, at the end, I'm going to talk about where it's hitting you specifically relative to your rising sign, but just in a general sense, exes, babe. The exes are going to come back. And of course, you know, I think we typically want to relate Venus to like romantic relationships, and I don't doubt for a second that any of your romantic partners are going to resurface, but also, you know, just on a relational stance, any old platonic relationships, old professional relationships, familial relationships. I think ultimately what's going to get most highlighted is your relationship with yourself, but people from the past are probably going to resurface. And I really, really, really want us to work with this intentionally, because this is huge if we know how to approach and work with it. Whether or not people from our past come up is besides the point, but I would really, really, really invite you, especially because you're going to already be in a naturally reflective state, to look at your former partnerships, romantic, platonic, any relationship that you have had that you no longer have. I would really invite you to look at those and ask yourself, what is it that I learned about this relationship? Whether it was from the dissolution of it, through the peak of it, what did I learn not only about who I am within partnership, but also what I will now demand in my partners, in my friends, in my professional coworkers, in my bosses, in my workspaces, especially how I'm going to be intentional with how I allow my family to treat me. What have I learned from the dissolution of this relationship, and how am I going to apply that to how I stand and voice my worth moving forward? Which is like the most incredible up-leveling when it comes to how we stand in our sense of empowerment if we really work alongside this. So if you find yourself reflecting on former partnerships, really like, girl, if I were you, and I'm definitely going to do this once we're like already direct, but I'm going to sit down, I'm going to journal. I'm going to write down every former major relationship that I've had, romantic, but also like the former friendships I've had, and really reflect on like, what did I learn in respect to how I was treated, how I let myself be treated, and also like how good it was, and what I really want to take away from that relationship and experience again on the relationships that I have moving forward. How am I going to make sure that I voice this and that I find value in this? What do I no longer value? What do I want to make sure that I value much more loudly? Really just using this state of reflection and this reflective period to get really clear and succinct on who you are manifesting into your reality, but also who you want to be moving forward relationally, which is, I think, something that goes hand in hand. If you are in a space where you are single and you want to call in a romantic partnership, you want to make sure that you're clear on not only what it is that you will no longer tolerate and what you want to be extra sure you are demanding, but also like, what are you bringing to the table? Which is another thing. With this Venus retrograde, girl, I have so much to say. With this Venus retrograde being in the sign of Capricorn, thank you for joining, my love. I don't want to say that you're going to be asking, okay, let's just tee. So Capricorn is a materialistic sign, but above all else, I love you. It's a sign that really wants to value and honor efficiency. So when it comes to retrograding in Venus, it really wants us to ask ourselves, what relationships are taking from me, and what relationships am I giving too much to? And ultimately, are my relationships efficient? Like, do these relationships actually supply and supplement my life, or are they just to take up space? Also, you're going to begin to like kind of categorize the people in your life and really figure out what are the roles that they play for me, and am I asking something from someone that doesn't have the capability of giving it to me, but maybe they fit another role in my life? There's going to be just a really deep when it comes to reflection, recalibration, and redefinition of how you are approaching and experiencing your relationships. And ultimately, you want to make sure that you're in an empowered state when it comes to honoring the dissolution of the ones that no longer serve who you've evolved into, and ultimately what this retrograde has taught you about what it means to stand in your sense of self-worth. So if you have any problems or issues when it comes to demanding what it is that you deserve, demanding apologies, and even like saying your apologies, this Venus in retrograde, especially conjoining Pluto, is going to be like, where did you learn that you can't do that? Or where did you learn that you're too good to do that? And how are you going to make sure that you are now evolving into a state where you are either humble or brave and empowered relative to whatever is happening with you? And like I said, I'll go through your like rising signs and where it's transiting in your houses. Also, just a side note, with it being also obviously a Venus retrograde, Venus rules aesthetic and beauty. So right now, if you are feeling like, I want to change up how I look, I want to cut my hair, I want to dye it, I want to get a tattoo, which mind you, I have like 5 tattoo ideas and I don't even have a single tattoo. And I went from not having one to like, I want 7. What I would invite you to do is slow down a little bit. Maybe wait until the retrograde is over before you make any permanent decisions. And if you do want to do something, just make sure that it is something you planted the seed for maybe before the retrograde. Because aesthetic changes, just changes in our lives and our relationships right now, are meant to be more pondered on than action oriented. This sounds like it'll be fun. It will. Like I said, I don't know if you missed it before, but I would really take the time to just like journal on our former relationships and really like have fun with it. And if you find yourself longing for any former lovers, like I said, this isn't only romantic, but if you're longing for former relationships at all, separate the person from the feeling that they gave you and really reflect on what is it that I want again that I experience in this relationship, because I guarantee you that person is not the only embodiment of how you're going to experience it, and you can kind of get lost in the idea of missing someone if you don't realize that you are missing what they gave you or what they allowed you to experience. And when you separate the emotion from the person or the experience from the person, you can kind of like redefine and redirect your energy a little bit. So That is important. What else? Like I said, it's not advised to make major changes or decisions. Breakups and like rekindlings are just inevitably going to happen right now. But if you're in a situation where you are finding yourself really wanting to make a large decision when it comes to that, just take some time to breathe through it. Like I said, this is more of a reflective state than an action-oriented one. But I mean, you're going to do what you want to do. I'm just, remember Jasmine told you to just relax a little bit. I would invite you to play around with your aesthetic. Just don't do anything that's too like permanent, unless you're feeling brave, babe. Reflect on what did you get out of your relationships? What do you currently get out of your relationships? And are they efficient? Are they serving you? Yes, and it's, of course, I think the most important thing, and this has a lot to do with Pluto conjoining it, we're really going to be in a state where we're reflecting on our limiting beliefs regarding love and abundance. So, like, what are your limiting beliefs surrounding what it is that you deserve in partnership? Do you, on a surface level, think that, like, yes, I want this grand love, but you somehow repel it, you somehow freeze up, or is there some sort of like inner voice that's saying, you need to do this in order to receive this. You need to look a certain way or do a certain thing in order to be worthy of receiving a kind of love that you desire. It's a hard truth to face within ourselves. It's a hard truth that I continue to have to face with myself. And I'm always like, I thought I worked through that insecurity. And the insecurity is like, babe, did you? But I will say, this is more for myself than anyone else, but I do want to say that if you find yourself having to evaluate an insecurity or a limiting belief that you felt like you have already worked through, you are looking at it through an up-leveled, higher state of consciousness. And when we revisit lessons that we have already worked through, we need to realize that we looked at it through a much less matured lens. And now that we're sort of refacing them in a state of evolution, it's a much more beneficial lens to be looking at it through. And so yeah, you're going to be looking at the insecurities and the limiting beliefs surrounding your sense of self-worth that you may have looked at before, but now you're looking at it through a much more empowered sense of self. So yeah, if you have any limiting beliefs surrounding love, what you deserve in partnership, and how you have, or rather your capability in asking for that, attracting it, saying no when you know it isn't there, but it's more comfortable to say yes, that's going to be loud. But also Capricorn rules material, rules relationship with material. So like, what are your beliefs surrounding money and abundance, and however you define or see abundance as currency? And ultimately, do you see yourself as money? Do you see your energy, your time, your essence as something that should be taxed? Are you just giving it away? Are you depleting yourself? And ultimately, do you see yourself as like innately worthy enough to say no to the things you know aren't honoring your sense of self-worth, and yes to the things that would take some bravery to accept? So I hope that made sense. But honestly, like, aside from like being really intentional with how we're spending money and how we're receiving money and how we define our deservedness of money, deservedness, is that a word? Also, like, do you see yourself as the most valuable form of currency that you own? And are you being intentional with that as well? Are you budgeting your energy and your time? Or are you just giving it away freely? Things alongside that nature. And otherwise, I think that's the major gist of it. Reflect on your former loves and really take the time to decide what they each taught you about yourself versus what you want. And let that build who you're manifesting into your life and also who you're deciding to be. I know I already said that in several ways, but I think it's like the most important point that I want to drive in. And when it comes to all of the shit that is inevitably going to come up regarding our limiting beliefs surrounding self-worth, relationships, platonic, romantic, professional, familial, abundance, our energy, just what we deserve to experience in this life, and also just like our relationship, because Venus inevitably rules our relationship to luxury and to living well. And if you think, in order for me to be this spiritual being, I have to forfeit my desire to have material, you're gonna have to reflect on that thought as well. So just know that this is a state of reflection, not a state of action. If, former loves, just in the guise of a rose-colored lens, come through, enjoy it, play around with it. I'm not going to tell you to not be messy because I'm messy, but ultimately it's all about like separate the person from what they made you feel, separate the person from the experience. And if you find yourself missing and longing for something, look at what it is rather than who it was coming from. And with that being said, If you know your rising sign, listen out for it, and I will tell you kind of like where, oh my god, not this. I'll tell you what house it is transiting for you, and ultimately what will you, I mean, what I just served is an overall general experience of how we're going to have this retrograde sort of play out for us. But if you know where it's transiting your houses, it'll kind of give you a more personalized experience of it. Oh, I'm so glad. My Venus is in Capricorn. Oh, shit. Okay. So your Venus is getting hit by Venus. Yeah. That, honestly, I would really say for you, a lot is going to happen, but ultimately you may really have a huge aesthetic change or a change in what you create, right? Because Venus also rules creation and art and beauty. And I know obviously you're an artist, so like you may try out some new things with what you create. I'm going to rewatch this and take notes. I love you. Okay, so, oh, Jess, thank you for joining, my love. So yes, I want to immediately start off with, if you are a Capricorn Rising, this is going to be transiting your first house, which is the house of identity, but ultimately it's the house of aesthetic. So you are really going to probably want to change up the way that people see you, what you create, and ultimately just like what I think that's the house where you're really going to have to be really, really, really intentional with like how much are people consuming my energy, and am I being intentional with how much I tax my energy. My love, I've been meaning to text you. I will text you, Jess. I miss you so much, and I need some Reiki. Everyone, if you need Reiki distance in person, Jess Be Inspired is the one for you. If you are Aquarius rising, it's your 12th house. So this is going to go into our deep subconscious beliefs. So if you have any deep uprooting that needs to be done when it comes to how you believe and react and interact with your sense of self-worth, now is not only going to be the time to like redefine them, but to also look at the root of where they stemmed from. What in your upbringing, in your conditioning, in your familial relationships, in your platonic relationships, in the societal conditioning of self, have you learned that like you need to perform for, be performative in your relationships, or perform and, you know, act alongside conditioning in order to deserve whatever it is that your sense of self-worth, which is innate, should already be in reception of. I hope that made sense. Sometimes I say so many words that are not necessary. Basically, who taught you that you ain't that bitch? And how can you undo that? Yes. Pisces, if you are a Pisces rising, this will be in your 11th house. 11th house is not only our relationship with the digital experience, with internet, with social media. So if you're feeling really overwhelmed or overstimulated, that's going to be really loud right now. But also it's friendships. So if you have a Pisces rising, ooh, child, you're really going to want to be hyper intentional with your friendships. And are you part of a large friend group that you feel like your voice is falling in the wayside in? Do you want to call in more aligned friends? Do you feel like you have a group where you can actually speak on your truth and be your like weird woo self with? Just really reflecting on your relationships and your friendships, and reflecting on the ones that you are simply maintaining because they've been around for a long time. Because I find that if you are friends with someone since like childhood or a long time, you kind of feel this like invisible obligation to maintain it, even if you've outgrown it or evolved out of what it was centered in. So if that resonates, that's that. If you're an Aries rising, 10th house, babe, 10th house is career. 10th house is how we stand on a platform and the world experiences us. So if you have an Aries rising, you're definitely going to be in a state of reflection when it comes to, does the career that I'm walking on right now align? Oh yeah, I'm definitely getting to Aquarius, babe. I'm getting to Aquarius. Does the career that I'm building for myself, does it align with my sense of self-worth? Am I doing this just to survive? Am I doing this just to appease? But also just like, especially if you are self-employed, are you demanding what it is that you are worth? Are you charging to satisfy? Are you charging relative to what it is that you are offering? And also, are you brave enough to take a leap of faith when it comes to career and ask for, redefine, redo it in a way that honors who you've evolved into? An immediate read, I'm out. Babe, we'll talk about it. I'll see you in the DMs. Taurus, 9th house. 9th house is the house of travel. So if you're Taurus rising, now I would actually really invite you to do some sort of travel, of course, relative to safety and relative to accessibility. But I would just invite you to kind of explore a little bit. But also 9th house outside of travel rules our relationship with how we define God, how we experience religion, and also how we like accumulate more knowledge. So I would invite you to explore some new ideas, explore some new topics, really dive into something that is new for your like mind to kind of feed off of. Explore new terrain, explore new seasons, explore new like physical environments, but ultimately really sit down and say, how can I uproot how I've been taught God has been, and how can I now align my belief with who I've evolved into? Michelle, it me. Oh, bitch. Oh, that last part. Oh, girl. Oof. Okay. Gemini, 8th house. 8th house is always a house that I'm so awkward talking about because I feel like as much as I study it, I can't really understand it. I do, but like also it's such a complicated house. But if you're Gemini rising, it's transiting your 8th house. This is also the house of like death, sex, rebirth, everything that is taboo. So if there are things in your life that you are not really wanting to face because it's a taboo subject relative to identity and rebirth, relative to sex, relative to like depression and the darker parts of mental health awareness, now is definitely going to be a time to really reflect on like, do I need help? Which is such a crazy thing to say. Maybe you're not experiencing that at all. Also, 8th house rules other people's money and inheritances. So if you feel like you are being overly reliant on being taken care of, now is definitely going to be a time to reflect on how you can stand more independently financially. Cancer, I might have already said 12th house, y'all. I mean, which is Aquarius. If you missed Aquarius rising, then it's a 12th house, subconscious. All it has to do with like, what is your inner voice telling you every single day? And is your inner voice actually supporting who you've evolved yourself to become? And is your inner voice, is your subconscious, is it things that you go to sleep with? Is like the voice in the back of your head actually affirming beautiful things for you? Or are you being too hard on yourself? And really look at if those harsher thoughts are stemmed from people around you, conditioning, all of those beautiful things. Okay, yeah, so Cancer, 7th house. I'm almost done, guys, and then I'll set you all free. Cancer, it's your 7th house, babe. Relationships, marriage. If you are a Cancer rising, love, which I mean, for all of us, we're all gonna, to some degree, experience his exes and all of that. But if it's your 7th house that is transiting, it has everything to do with like, who am I making sure that I am demanding to be in my life? Who am I settling for? Really just in your romantic relationships. It's the house of marriage. So that's, hi, my love, thank you for joining. So that's definitely going to be at the forefront. And I think most of all, 7th house rules our relationships with the external, but everything that we experience externally is a reflection of what's going on internally. So you want to make sure that who you are demanding to experience in your life is a reflection of who you decided to be inwardly as well. Last few, Leo is the 6th house. This is the house of health, the house of routine. This is a really dope house to have Venus transit because it is really going to be a call. I've said not to do action, but recalibration when it comes to what is your daily routine and is it honoring who you've decided to become to be? So like, do you want to be this like aligned, productive, healthy version of yourself? And meanwhile, you're like getting up at 12, you're not being intentional with like your eating and you're just like, fuck it, nothing matters. And that isn't at all an invitation to like suddenly live a really militant life or like only eat healthy, but rather just like, what does it mean to make sure that every decision you make every single day honors your mental, physical, spiritual health and makes you feel good? Are you living a life that feels good? 6th house also rules like what we do every single day. So there may be a job change if you have a Leo rising. Virgo rising is 5th house, which is the house of child. So just any inner child healing is going to be at the forefront. And typically whenever we have like a 5th house highlight, we want to look at what beliefs about ourselves and our sense of self-worth and our relationships stem from what we experienced in our inner child or in our childhood, and how that inner child is still acting from a wounded place. But also it's a beautiful, beautiful time to be as creative as possible. So if there are any like artistic endeavors that you haven't been brave enough to embark on, now would definitely be the time to like reflect on why that is and start doing it not for the sake of profit or gain, but rather just like fun, just unconditional expression. Last few, we have Libra in 4th house. Oof, if you're a Libra rising, babe, you're really feeling this one. 4th house is the house that rules our sense of self, our sense of home, also our relationship to mother. I will say, For Aries risings, that was in the house of father. So also you want to reflect on your relationship with any paternal figures in your life and how that has influenced either positively or negatively your relationship with self. And if you're a Libra rising, you want to do the same thing for any maternal relationships in your life and how they have influenced or defined your relationship with your sense of self, or the romantic, familial, platonic relationships you are allowing to be in your reality. So also with fourth house, you may move, you may want to move, you may make plans to move. But yeah, it's just like, have you made a safe home within yourself? Are your thoughts safe? Is your physical environment comforting? Just, do you feel safe to come back home to yourself every single day? That's a hard question. I may journal on that, actually. Do I feel safe coming back home to myself? I hope that okay, whatever. Scorpio rising, third house. Third house is the house of the mind. It's the Mercury ruled house. So it has everything to do with, are you speaking on your worth? Are you demanding your worth? Do you know your worth, but you're not actually like voicing and actually like manifesting it verbally and therefore expressing it? Just look at what your relationship is when it comes to defending yourself, speaking up for yourself. And also if you have any desire to write, to express yourself in a written or poetic way, now would be the time to just, I don't know, make plans to embark on that. And lastly, Sagittarius rising for me. I am Sagittarius rising. It's in my second house, which is crazy because I have been just like hyperactively spending my money, and second house is the house of money. So not only do you want to look at your relationship and your limiting beliefs surrounding money, but also the second house not only rules our relationship to the material, but like our worth and our value, and especially how we find and value worth within ourselves. So a sense of self-worth is going to be really deeply redefined and uprooted right now when it comes to what are the limiting beliefs surrounding our sense of self-worth, which seems to be like an overarching theme for all of us, but also just like if you have a Sagittarius rising, it's going to be super hyperactively highlighted. So I am now losing my ability to speak, so I'm going to hop off, but I hope that any part of that resonated, and if it didn't, it will, because Venus retrograde, this is going to be a loud one, and we're only in the shadow period of it, and I feel like we're already kind of feeling it. So I'm excited to see how it plays out for all of you guys. Thank you for listening. Share this. And if you ever want to have like a one-on-one with me and see how it's particularly hitting your chart or anything like that, you know where to find me. But otherwise, I'm sending you all my love. Have a good week, and that is it. I'm going to go drink water.